Good evening and welcome along to NUfC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. And as always, on a Wednesday night, I'm joined by the living legend, Supermac, and John Gibson. Hi, lads.
Hi, Steve. Hi, John. How are you all?
Great. Good to see you, lads. Good to see you. And welcome to the live crowd. I've been neglecting the show over the last couple of nights, having pre-records on. So this is the first live one of the week. So it's good to be back and taking everybody's questions. I'm sure we'll get a lot coming in tonight. Let's start then, Malcolm. It's a week since we did the last show. It was doom and gloom. We're looking at potentially looking at relegation season. Have we suddenly had a turn of fortunes, or is this? Are you basically looking at this and thinking, well, don't get too excited? Are you happy with the signings, Malcolm?
I really can't say until I see them play and how Steve organises them. I'm happy that Steve's gone and he's done a lot of business in a very few short days. So I am delighted with that, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how these guys all settle in. And I'm looking for. I want to see just how he shapes them all up as a working unit, and then what they can do. It's interesting though that they signed the centre forward from Bournemouth and then give him the 9 shirt. So
now there we have it. Now there was rumours going round that he'd been given the number 9, but this is something we can talk about. He's took the 13, and the Joe Linton is it's only just come out today. Joe Linton is keeping a hold of the number 9 shirt.
Really? I wonder why. I would have thought he'd be glad to get rid of it.
Yeah, we'll come to that. John, I'll come to you about these players first, and cast your mind back to the 1980s. I'm old enough to remember the 1980s when Willie McFall got the checkbook out and bought he bought Dave Besant, the goalkeeper, Andy Thorne, the centre half, John Hendry and John Robinson, who turned out to be the smallest pair of centre forwards in our history, and Glyn Hodges, who didn't last much longer than 85 days, I don't think. That season, the infamous 1988-89 season, after spending such a great amount of cash, Newcastle United were promptly relegated. Now, that can happen. We've spent a lot of money. We brought in players who essentially we all hope will make Newcastle's job of staying in the Premiership a lot easier. But I'm just trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate there, John. What's your take? Is it going to be a season of joy, do you think, with these lads, or do you think we might come a cropper?
Well, trust you to rain on our parade, Steve. But I do know where you're coming from, because I remember that season with Willie McFall ever so well. And if money was the automatic answer to every problem, we wouldn't have a number 9, because Joe Linton at 40 million would have ripped the backside out the Premier League instead of scoring just 2 goals. So it's an automatic answer. I do believe that the 3 signings we had this week, Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser and Jamal Lewis, are good business by where Newcastle are. Not a Champions League club, but the club they are. I do think that is good business, and I do think it has significantly raised hopes, if not expectations. But yes, we have to be realistic. 3 players coming in is not going to turn Newcastle into the entertainers, is not going to turn suddenly where Newcastle are going to automatically qualify for Europe. But I do believe that their input will be significant in giving us a real chance of avoiding relegation and perhaps looking at a top 10 finish. The problem always is, of course, twofold in this case. First of all, I would like another striker to come in on loan at Newcastle, but heaven forbid. But if Callum Wilson got an injury, we're back to Joe Linton, Muto and Andy Carroll, with a lack of goals, as being our through-the-middle strikers, because Dwight Gale's out for a while. So that is a worry. Ryan Fraser isn't ready yet. I mean, I think Fraser and Wilson go together terrific. 2 seasons ago, they were wonderful in partnership for Bournemouth, both very, very quick, which when we think we get Maximin and Almiron as well, that's a very quick foursome. But Fraser's not ready yet. He hasn't played for 6 months because he didn't increase his contract for when we come back after coronavirus. So he's going to take time to get up to speed. But I would hope that it will have a significant lifting of spirits at Newcastle.
Yeah, you're right. Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser, of course, tried and tested, play with each other, lived in the same street, I think, at Bournemouth at one point. So, yeah, look, my view is I'm happy to see these signings come in. Anything's better than nothing, and we've had plenty of nothing under Mike Ashley. So I'm optimistic that these guys will hit the ground running. We need the luck with injuries. We need the luck with suspensions, as all football teams do. But it's a start. It's encouraging also to hear that that's not going to be the end of it. They're still chasing other players. So hopefully you get you get what you want, John. We all get what we want, and another forward coming in. Malcolm, back to you on the number 9 shirt. And a lot of people asking about it. James Brown says, hello, what are your views about Callum Wilson reportedly taking the number 13 shirt and Joe Linton keeping the number 9 shirt? Lee Taylor also says, the number 9 shirt at the club is the most iconic number because of the legends which have worn the number over the years. As one of those legendary forwards, Malcolm, what is your opinion on Joe Linton? David Morton says, just retire the number 9 shirt until someone earns it. A lot of people talking about the number 9 shirt. As always, Malcolm, it is iconic because of people like yourself who've worn it with such, skill and pride and banged the goals in. What's your view on the news that, Callum Wilson, didn't take it because it wasn't on offer? So Joe Linton is keeping a hold of it. What is your view on that?
Well, I'd love to know whose decision it was for Callum not to have the number 9. And I'm surprised that Joe Linton wanted to keep hold of it. If I'd been him in the situation that he finds himself at this club, I would have said, take it. Go on, take it. Give it to anybody. Give me just any old big number. So I'm just wondering whether people aren't realizing, the people who are in the club aren't realizing just what the number 9 actually means up here. I'm sure that Steve Bruce understands, but I don't understand why he's made this decision and allowed it to happen. But good for Callum that he's taken the number 13. It shows that he's not superstitious at all, and I hope he does really well. Quite how it's all going to start. In all honesty, can you see Joe Linton getting in the side?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I hate to say this, Malcolm. I was asked this on Twitter today, but yes, I do. I think he'll play most games again. There's something in his contract I'm convinced about. I'm just convinced that there is something in his contract that says he's got to play. We'll find out. We'll find out as soon as the weekend comes, because I've got a feeling he'll stick with him. I
have never known a clause like that. Have you, John? Have you ever come across a clause in an English Premier League contract or Football League contract? No. I would hate
to see it, Malcolm. I would hate to see it. The interesting thing, guys, the interesting thing about the Joe Linton, Callum Wilson thing that I think we've got to say, from Wilson's point of view, he said that he is saying that he doesn't want to cause any trouble in the dressing room by taking the shirt off a guy that's already got it in the club. But I think that's a number 9 shirt off Joe Linton. But I think it's rather interesting, Malcolm, that he has worn 13. Now, he has worn the number 13 shirt for the last 6 years, 6 playing seasons, and has scored a pile of goals and got in the England side wearing the 13 shirt, which isn't unlucky for him. And I think, therefore, he's quite happy to continue wearing the 19 shirt. But he doesn't want to create by taking the 9 off him. But the interesting thing with that, Malcolm, the interesting thing with that, mate, is just to emphasize that we have had this problem before. If you remember, when Les Ferdinand come here, he got the number 9 shirt. Then we signed Alan Shearer, and Kevin Keegan took the number 9 shirt off Ferdinand and give it to Shearer, which I think we can all understand. Ferdy did say that he was very dischuffed about that, but it didn't stop him playing in a 10 next to him, scoring a pile of goals alongside Shearer in one great season together. So we have had that before. But the point Malcolm made is the point that I really do believe. I would have taken it off Joe Linton because I think it's a weight on his back. The number 9 legend is a weight on his back.
I agree with you.
If I'd been Brucey, I would have took the 9 shirt off him.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to have bothered Callum Wilson, and as Daniel Smith points out, Malcolm, he says 13 is the lucky number for him. Of course, that's the shirt that he wore at Bournemouth, so maybe he's more superstitious about wearing that, Mal.
Maybe so. So, well, good luck to him on that. I really do wish him well, and look forward to seeing him play in black and white stripes. I really do. But I'm still trying to get my head around this Joe Linton thing. Where is he going to play? If the players that have been purchased in recent days, if they're going to get into the side, I can't see where the room is for Joe Linton.
What's your thoughts on the left back, Malcolm? Do you know much about him? The guy from Watford, Jamal Lewis.
From Norwich.
I've seen him play 2 or 3 times. He's done nothing wrong, and he's a nice, tidy footballer. But I look forward to seeing him on a very regular basis, and that's when you can seriously judge people. But that's it's sort of pretty much saying who is going to be the number 3, the left back. I don't think that Steve Bruce fancies the lad that's already there.
A lot of people suggesting left wing. David Phelps says maybe Joe Linton will just be sub. A lot of people thinking we'll go with Andy Carroll on Saturday. We'll come to that game in a minute. But yeah, John, I mean, the left back's been a problem over the last few years. A lot of people been crying out for a left back. Often we feel that Paul Dummett doesn't really see himself as a left back. You know, would always feel more comfortable playing in the centre. But he's been almost like the only man standing at times. But what's your take on the new fullback that's come in from Norwich, as you quite rightly corrected us?
Yeah, I mean, left back has been a problem, Steve, without a shadow of doubt. We had Willems and we had Rose on loan last season. The trouble with Paul Dummett, who I think is quite a good in a flat back 4, but not as a wing back where he's got to get up and down because his strength's not getting forward.
He's not good at going forward.
Dummett isn't fit a lot of the time now. No, not at all, Malcolm. And he's not fit regularly enough. He's not fit now, which shows you how much we need Jamal Lewis, because he's not fit. Now, this kid, the 2 things we've got to say here is he's blisteringly quick, and Newcastle outside of Maximum and Almiron have been struggling for pace. So the signing of the 3 guys this week who are all quick is good. And we must remember as well, this is a kid who Liverpool were very, very keen just a few weeks ago to take to be the cover to Robertson at Liverpool. And then the fee got in the way of the thing, and they took the Greek guy instead. But it was considered good enough by Jurgen Klopp to be part of the squad at the champions and the recent European champions as well, surely he's got a good chance to be good enough for us. And I do think that he's a little bit better than good enough for us. I think he's got a real chance. And it does solve the two things that have made me happy this week, Michael, is that we've tried to solve two of the major problems in the club, i.e., a centre forward plays as a centre forward and can score goals, and a left back who's comfortable there, not popping Matt Ritchie in or relying on Dummett with his fitness. We've tried to solve two major problems in the team, and I'm pleased about that.
Yeah, I think they're both good. Well, listening to the interviews today on Sky Sports, they all sound very, very accomplished. I know a lot of players now are media trained and, they're told to say the right things. But yeah, it's very impressive. A lot of people asking about Cheon Wura. Colin Wilson asking, is Cheon Wura in Parliament later to talk about the Premier League and the toads that run it? Yes, is the answer. She is on at 7 o'clock, I believe. And Malcolm, We've had our old friend Dick Masters back on television today. I'm not sure whether you saw Richard Masters come out and talk a little bit about, about people returning to football stadiums. It might have been a little bit premature for him to come out with that, as the Prime Minister came back on at 4 o'clock and said that return to sporting events could be highly unlikely. But yeah, we've got a situation developing again online on social media, because once again, he got doorstepped about takeovers, and he more or less admitted in a roundabout way that, they would be looking at the owners and directors test. Now, you can take that two ways. The majority of social media took it that, oh, well, the takeover's off, and, him saying that's not a good sign. Again, I took it in a positive way, because what he's essentially said was, we need to look at this owners and directors test. It's not right. I think that there's been some frailties with it, and he wasn't talking about Newcastle United in particular. In fact, the only team he actually referenced was Bury. But with regards to Newcastle United's takeover, I think that is a positive. And should there be a return to the table by PIF and PCP and the Rubens publicly with the Premier League, we might see a chink of light in it. And like I said last week, I'm still very optimistic that we will see some kind of movement or action and something will happen. But yeah, Richard Masters coming out and saying that is encouraging, isn't it? I would say it is anyway.
Well, yes, and yet it was the Saudis who walked away of their own volition. And so I wonder, would they be prepared to return? And I'm not so sure, Steve. You seem to have a confidence in it that they would, but I really am not sure that they would be prepared to do so. Arabs don't like to be seen to change their mind. I don't think. Once they made a decision, they stick with it. And so I'm very sceptical on all of this.
He did sympathise with the Newcastle fans, Malcolm. He did say, I sympathise with the Newcastle fans. That's why I spoke to the NUfC Trust and wrote an open letter to MPs around the failed takeover. So there was that reference, and that's, I think, where people are getting the negativity from, feeling that that's him saying, well, I've spoken to the fans and that's the end of it, But yeah, some people, again, mixed opinion on here. Mitch Hunter, he's saying that he's going to move the goalpost again. Steve, my guess, to block a second attempt from the Saudis. That's my opinion. Martin says Richard Masters is just doing a PR exercise before the MPs discuss the takeover situation, which, of course, as I said, is at 7 o'clock tonight. Jordan, he says China's pulled £600 million in TV rights. Masters has also lost $1 billion in investment from the Saudis. He's not really improving his CV, is he? And David Little, he says, I think Masters has realised he's lost Saudi money after losing Chinese money. It's panic stations. I'd be surprised if PIF came back. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm still very confident. Malcolm's sitting on the fence, which I understand why. We've all built our hopes up too many times to do it again. John, what's your take?
Basically, the same as Malcolm. I'm hoping you're right, Steve, because regardless of this week in the transfer market, Newcastle United's long-term future is not with Mike Ashley. pray God, because things aren't. We need a break still in that situation. But I've got to this where I'll believe when it happens. And in the meantime, I do not want to get too enthused about the possibility, because this was the closest we ever got to utopia. We went from thinking we might just be in Manchester City to thinking we're going to be relegated, and then just coming a little bit back this last week to think we can just escape relegation. But that is still keeping the bar low, isn't it? You know, the signings this week have given optimism to Tyneside, but only that we can avoid relegation, not that we're going to smack the top of the table. So we do need this owner any sort of chance.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Daniel Smith asks a question, Mal. Oh, go on, Mal.
Yeah,
go on.
Well, it was exactly that I wanted to mention. So if you want to read it out, please do.
Yeah. Fenerbahce have Joe Linton on a list of players that they want, apparently. Would you just cut the losses and get a younger striker if an offer for Joe came in? Liverpool are considering the sale of Ryan Brewster.
It looks like he's going to go, Ryan Brewster. And yes, I would certainly get what I can for Joe Linton, and I would go for Ryan Brewster. And I think he's just over 20, isn't he? 20, 21.
Yeah.
You know what? And he's got a terrific pedigree with regards to who he's been playing with, who he's been learning from, and I would think that he will be a very serious goal-scoring prospect in the Premiership.
Yeah, well, we've broken the mold here, John, haven't we? Or Mike Ashley has. We're being led to believe by the media narrative that this is down to Bruce's fantastic relationship with Mike Ashley. In fact, only today, Mike Ashley flew in his helicopter and skydived onto the training pitch to come and speak to Steve Bruce and to embrace his new players. So, is this a match made in heaven, Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley?
Great question. You may well remember, Steve, that at this time last year, Ashley came in the same chopper to say how wonderful it was to Brucey and to congratulate Joe Linton on coming to Newcastle and getting the number 9 shirt. And look at how that turned out. He seems to come up once a year in the chopper on the day of a press conference to unveil his new signings. Joe Linton last year, the 3 boys significantly, by the way, knocks himself into a press conference like where he can be asked questions, but he pops up, shakes hands with the new signers, has a word with Steve, and then pops home again. So this is nothing new, what has happened today. I honestly think that he was so interested in Newcastle, and a lot of people argue that's always been the case. But I think he is looking now that he may well be the owner of Newcastle for the whole of this season, and as such has got to protect his investment with what has been done this week in the transfer market and with jollying up his manager and his new players. It's a move because this man suddenly thinks he might be here longer than he anticipated or longer than he wished.
Okay, there's another good point from Mad Mag Mark Malcolm. George Culkin said today that both Fraser and Wilson were players on the Staveley-led consortium transfer list. Ashley still wants this sale of the club to go through. Certainly moves to keep the consortium sweet. And we saw a little, somebody actually put something up there a little bit earlier about Keith Downey, of course, on Sky. Yeah, he did say that. He did say that Mike Ashley was hoping that the consortium would come back to the table. So we're getting plenty sound bites from Mike Ashley with regards to the Saudi bid. Richard Masters coming out and saying something positive. George Culkin, who we know is very close to Amanda Staveley, coming out and saying that Fraser and Wilson were both on a potential new consortium's list. Is someone pulling the strings here, Malcolm, do you think? Or is this literally Ashley, protecting his investment?
Well, a really interesting one. This, if that is true that these players were on the list, then I wonder whether behind the scenes that there are talks still ongoing, despite the fact that the Saudis appear to have pulled out, and that I agree wholeheartedly that Mike Ashley wants to get this deal done. He wants to sell Newcastle United, and so he may well have said, you know, what players are on your list, and you know, if I can afford them, I'll sort of kick off before anything actually happens with regards to a takeover.
Yeah, John,
you know,
is that something? John, is that something that would surprise you? You know, if that was all interlinked?
Quite frankly, yes, it would surprise me, because the problem isn't keeping, my mind, Steve, the problem isn't keeping the Saudis on side. Basically, if they were guaranteed tomorrow that this deal would go through, they would still do it. I don't think there's a need to keep them on side by signing their players. The problem is the Premier League. The problem isn't Mike wanting to sell or not, Staveley's mob wanting to buy or not. That's the problem. That remains exactly the way it has always been. The problem is the Saudis getting over the beaches book that is the Premier League. That is the problem. And whether we sign Fraser or Wilson ain't going to make the Premier League change their mind. It's the Premier League that have got to be persuaded there is a way around this deal, or it can still be done, or it can happen again. I mean, in fairness to Steve Bruce, I believe these two signings have been on Steve Bruce's list for an awful long while, and he is the man in charge today, not the Saudis or whoever they would want as manager or whatever. And I think Ashley is saying, Steve Bruce has been saying to Ashley, the best thing you can do, Mike, is protect your investment. Otherwise, at the end of this coming season, you might be selling a championship side. And if you can do that by signing these people, bear in mind that we've only spent something like less than 36 million this week because the guy is free. So we've spent less than we spent to get Joe Linton. So we haven't certainly gone berserk. And the other signings that we had, Hendricks and the goalkeeper, were free transfers. So it's not suddenly like Ashley has loosened his purse strings and Chelsea-type money's fallen out. It is nothing like that. I think it's clever being within the rigid restrictions that Newcastle United have got. And so I'm not reading too much into that regarding the takeover, because it doesn't cut one iota with the Premier League, and they're the ones mind we've all got to change.
Yeah, fair enough, John. Good point. Stephen Lord is asking us, who do we think Newcastle United will sell or get rid of over the next couple of weeks? Lejeune has been linked now with a loan deal, I think, Malcolm, out of the club. You know, I think a lot of us agree that we've seen the best of Lejeune. He's had two horrific injuries. Unfortunately, when he came back, you know,
and age is against him as well, Steve.
100%. But is it, you know, so it looks like Lejeune will go. Do you think he'll be able to offload the likes of Mutu, etc.?
Well, I would dearly hope so. You know, the two players who I feel are doing Newcastle United no good whatsoever are Muto and Joe Linton, and I would be a very happy man if I were to see both of those players go.
Yeah. Okay, John. Any word, you know, in the journalists' world about, you know, other deals, or if there's anybody else likely to go over the next couple of weeks?
I think we desperately need now, and we always have, of course, to unload some guys, because we get guys who are on the books, get wages, don't actually make the Premier League squad. People like Sevet and Rolando, Aarons, Lazar. We need those type of players out quick. I'm like Malcolm. I would love to see Muto, etc., go as well. But the two problems is who's going to buy Muto with his goal scoring record, for starters, and secondly, when somebody, even if they're presented with a player for peanuts, can't wages current Newcastle United, which is what Colback was there for so long, which is why Servette's been there for so long, which is why Lazar's been there for so long. And so it's very, very difficult to get rid. But we need now to get rid of people. And no doubt centre-halves will come into it. Lejeune, yeah, I can understand that. And one way of getting him out is that to go out on loan. So therefore the wages aren't affected, and there's no transfer fees for the buying. So it's easy to go as well. We're overstocked among centre-halves without them necessarily being good. Remember that despite having all these centre-halves, Steve Bruce wanted Rob Holding, who unfortunately now looks as if he will not be coming because Arteta seems to have had second thoughts and decided that he wants to hold on to this guy, which is a bit of a shame, I feel. I think it is a bit of a shame. I think we could do with that door slammed because there has been injuries, but Lejeune and Shaw, form-wise, went to rest towards the end of last season. And while we might have a lot of numbers in centre-halves, you have a look at how many goals we let in last season. Perhaps a problem to be solved before the window closes. Another striker in a centre, certain for me anyway.
Yeah, Malcolm, the form in the preseason hasn't been great. I know it's slightly different this year because of the short gap between the end of this last season and the beginning of this one. Defeats obviously to lower league opposition as well. Stoke obviously at the weekend. Middlesbrough, of course, got thumped 5-1. Is that a concern, or is that alleviated with these signings?
Well, I've always said that I never pay much attention to pre-season results. It's what I see the players doing, getting themselves totally fit, their touch, and so on and so forth. But what has rather scared me was the Middlesbrough result, that to concede 5, and I watched the goals on news, and it wasn't a good showing from the back four, I have to say. They looked quite ragbaggish.
Yes, yeah, that was disappointing, John, to see the back four concede as many goals, especially against Middlesbrough, who don't score many.
No, they don't.
Yeah, exactly that. And that problem hasn't really been here yet. So yes, there's a slight need to simmer down a little bit and see realistically that there are still problems there. But you can't help but say, go on, lads, to the Geordie lads this week to feel a bit of optimism at long last with the signings we've got. But we suffer, and you touched on it last night, from injuries. And we've already got Dubravka out for a while, although hopefully it's only going to be another month, not 2 months. So it was said today by Steve Bruce. We've got Dwight Gale, the other goal scorer, out for a while. So we're in a situation where if the new left back got injured, or if Callum Wilson got injured, where are we? If Callum Wilson gets injured and Gale is already injured, we've got Joe Linton with 2 goals last season. We've got Muto, who doesn't score, and Andy Carroll, who literally hasn't scored a competitive goal yet for Newcastle. So we haven't got depth. The only place we really got strength and depth is probably the 2 central midfield players, where because Hendricks has come in and we've got the 2 Longstaffs, got Shelby, and we've got Hayden. There's a few there, but elsewhere we can be vulnerable, and situation can change very easily with a bad knock somewhere. And next week, for example, we start with 3 games in a week, don't we? We play at West Ham, we're playing the League Cup at home on Tuesday night to Blackburn, and then we go again at the weekend. So there's always a possibility of injuries, and heaven forbid that happens to us, but it seems to quite often.
Yeah, Malcolm, David Phelps asking, do you think Middlesbrough game the players actually tried? There was stories of them coming off the pitch smiling and laughing and whatever. But I think some of this gets blown out of proportion a little bit. But I mean, would players go into a pre-season friendly without trying?
Not really, no. If they've got any serious intentions of being in the first team, then they need to impress Steve Bruce and his coaches. And if they don't, then there is no point in picking them. But I wasn't able to see the game. There were just 1 or 2 sort of highlights, the goals that I was able to view. So I don't know what happened generally in the game, and but certainly it gives Steve Bruce the good excuse to really sort the defence and defenders out, and to really work them hard, get them seriously organised, and certainly 1 or 2 new faces perhaps won't go amiss at all. You mentioned Holding from Arsenal. I was a bit disappointed on that. He is a really, really good player, and he has that Arsenal discipline of getting organised from the very first second. It's something that's been there for over half a century, and at Arsenal, and it would certainly put the Newcastle defence in good stead if they had somebody like that in, getting everything organised and getting players to do what they need to do.
Quick one there, Malcolm, for you on Callum Wilson. Do you think he'd die for the cause? Is he that kind of player? David says, obviously, you were a player who'd put your face where the boots were. Do you see Wilson as that kind of player?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah, he's. I think he sort of has a bit of a rough and ready attitude to things like that, and he'll stick his head in without any doubts, and he'll get into those positions that give him the chance to stick his head in. That's what Joe Linton doesn't do. He doesn't get into the situation in the first place. I know I've mentioned this some while back, but last season I saw Joe Linton only twice sprint from outside the box into the box, to the edge of the 6-yard box, and each time he did that, he scored. They were his goals. Now, why didn't he do that all of the time? Keep making those runs. If it works once, great. If it works twice, even better. That's a formula for success. Keep doing it, but he doesn't. And so I don't think it registers inside of his head what he needs to do to actually score goals. But we've got a fella coming in who he knows exactly what he's got to do. Yes, he'll stick his head in. If he's the kind of lad, I think, that if he sniffs a goal, he'll stick anything in there, whatever's the best to ensure he just gets that vital contact to knock it goalwards.
Yeah, I agree. Please, folks, while you're watching, just hit the little thumb underneath the video, give the video a like, and give it a share if you can on Facebook and Twitter for us. All views do help us, and follow us on Facebook as well. NUfC Matters. Somebody mentioned there slightly earlier, it's Mike Ashley's birthday today, John. but it's also a legend, a club legend's birthday. It's Frank Clark's. Tell us a little bit about Frank for those younger viewers watching.
Yeah, I think we'll celebrate Frank's a little bit more, and we'll celebrate Mr. Ashley's, even though we've had the week we have had. Frank Clark, as Malcolm knows ever so well. I mean, I was here during the whole of Frank Clark's Newcastle United. Malcolm joined in the team that went to Wembley in the FA Cup final, etc. He was one of the most underrated players at Newcastle. Defensively, absolutely magnificent. A huge Geordie Hart, who on in the twilight of his career and had arguably the best part of his career as a player at Nottingham Forest when he won everything up to the European Cup final. A fabulous player who has always maintained the European First Cup with Newcastle genuinely meant as much to him as winning the European Cup with Nottingham Forest. And I do believe that to be true. A man who went on and become a manager and did very well as a manager at Nottingham Forest and at Man City, and then went on into the boardroom and become chairman at Forest. So he's done just about every job there is to be done in football. A lovely, lovely lad. Epitomizes a time for me with my great love of Newcastle United. When I think won the European Cup and Malcolm's team went to Wembley in the FA Cup final of '74, when we had a real swashbuckling run to the final, which was exciting and dramatic, and the town was taken over completely with the bug. So happy birthday to Frank. Lovely to have the memories of Frank. And could those sort of days please return relatively quickly, kids?
Malcolm, what's your memories of Frank Clark?
Frank, he was a very, very intelligent man, and also a very intelligent footballer. And he could talk very seriously about the game all day long, and he was always worth listening to. And I used to go out for lunch after training with him most days of the week, and I have to say that thanks to him, I learned a lot from Frank. I really did. It was and I've noticed the comments that are coming in from fans saying how good he was. That wasn't how he was seen by supporters back then in the 70s, in the early 70s. I used to have a lot of arguments with supporters with regards to Frank, and they would say, "Oh no, he doesn't get forward. You don't see him tackle." And I said, "No, he doesn't tackle because he only waits until he can nick the ball, and he's brilliant at doing it." And he was brilliant at doing it. He was very quick. Nobody ever got past him, and wingers didn't like playing against him. That I have to say. And when he was given a free transfer in the summer of '75, the season had just ended, and he was absolutely bereft. He couldn't believe it, because he was actually in the throes of negotiating the contract with Joe Harvey, and Joe was instructed by the board to let him go. And so Frank went and joined Nottingham Forest. Brian Clough signed him, and he won the Second Division Championship. He then won the First Division Championship, then won the European Cup, and they won it again the following year, just for good measure. Now that is remarkable, and I wonder just what the Newcastle directors, who instructed Joe to give him a free, made of that, because Frank was one of those players that if you didn't really understand the game, he wouldn't impress you. so much, and I had all the time in the world for Frank. He is the best left back I have played with, and I've played with a lot, but he was the very best.
Great memories of Frank Clark there. We'll wish him all the best. And yeah, I mean, it's always good looking back on these players and you know, the memories we've got. But yeah, I agree that wasn't just before my time, but just watching some of the footage of Frank Clark and seeing how well he did in his career. He's another one of those legends in the game. Let's start looking ahead to the weekend, lads. And West Ham, of course, our opening fixture. West Ham, John, seem to be in a bit of turmoil. Players coming out in the press and social media, making comments about owners, managers, etc. is never a good sign.
No, it's lovely to see, isn't it? I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's normally us that suffer like that. But we've had a situation, we talked about us having a bad pre-season in terms of back-up defeats by championship sides. But West Ham last weekend lost at home to Bournemouth, relegated out of the Premier League, of course, and without the two lads who were about to sign for Newcastle. And Bournemouth won 5-3 at West Ham. It was rumoured that the local kid that was sold to West Brom was sold to the head of David Moyes, the manager, and that Moyes was chuffed about that. Various deals that he's tried to get through this week in the transfer market, he hasn't so far been unable to do so. So all is not sweetness and light down there. So it might be the ideal time with us on something of an up to get West Ham on something of a down and do something about it. Because the last thing we need, with all this optimism, newfound optimism that's flying about on Tyneside, all we need is to lose at West Ham with a fluky goal or whatever to prick our bubble and everybody to go, oh, we don't need that. They need to go there and get a result, at least a draw, but let's win, because I think West Ham are in turmoil, and to get off of a flyer is important, because the opening fixtures, all right, etc., but the opening fixtures are quite decent compared with what eventually comes nearer the run-in next year. So let's get points in the bag early doors.
Okay, yes, and on top of that, John, what I would say is that I would agree that West Ham do appear to be in some turmoil. The players don't seem happy nor settled. But on top of that, I don't get the impression that they have a confidence about playing in the stadium they're in. They don't look comfortable out on that pitch. And so I think Newcastle can certainly create an upset this weekend.
Yeah, Mad Mark and a few others pointing out that Callum Wilson has 7 goals in 8 appearances against West Ham. Let's hope he adds more goals to that record. I've got a sneaky suspicion he might just add to that at the weekend. So let's hope so. And as you say, it's a good time to play West Ham. Certainly going into that first game. Malcolm, who do you think?
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, can I just interrupt what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Can I just say, well done to the Premier League for actually changing their minds and declaring that every game will be televised, so that we can see our teams play for the full 90 minutes. So I thought it was the most ridiculous decision of theirs in the first place, but they've corrected it. So well done, the Premier League.
Yeah, fair play, Malcolm. Fair play, and yeah, it is good news. Obviously, Newcastle will be on at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, so it means everyone who watches Britain's Got Talent will have to record that and watch the match instead. Joking aside, the team, Malcolm, how do you see the team lining up at Saturday? Steve Bruce is now, and it's always good to have as a manager, has plenty of decisions to make.
He has, and I, as a manager, I always, as a player, as a manager, I always felt, excuse me, I always felt that when you bought a player, stick him in, you know, don't, so that they're in from the very start, and so I can see a side that is pretty unrecognisable from what we were watching last season, and I should just be watching very carefully every single second of the game as they tick by, just to see how Steve Bruce and his coaches have got it formulated out on the pitch, and how the players are working together, how they're creating understandings. It's going to be a quite fascinating match down there in London. It really is. You know, I remember back to when I first joined Newcastle. My opening game was away at Crystal Palace, and so it was John Tudor and I playing together in a league match, which is a lot different from friendlies. Playing together for the first time in a league match against a top division side, and of course then there was Terry Hibbett, you know, and so we all had to get to know him, and so on and so forth, and of course he and I we were very much key characters in the side, but we had to prove that. And so the Crystal Palace game, it didn't go well at all. But sometimes when that happens, you learn a lot. And I think that we did. And then we went to Spurs on the Tuesday or the Wednesday night, and we got a 0-0 draw, and that was a really good point. And then we came to Newcastle and we beat Liverpool, who were one of the best sides in the country. In fact, one of the best in Europe. And so it was a very quick and massive improvement over those 3 games. And so things aren't going to be absolutely knitted together come Saturday, but with the right attitude, and with the right understanding of what's going on around you, of who's around you, and what they're doing and what they're trying to do, you can very quickly get it all put together, and particularly with West Ham being in some turmoil, as we've already mentioned.
So Malcolm, let's go through the team before I come to John. In goal, who's he going to give the nod to?
Well, I think he's got despite his dreadful error, I think he's got to stick with the lad who's been doing the pre-season friendlies. You know, and I don't know whether you saw that sort of looking shot from Middlesbrough, and he was right up there in the top corner. You think, he's got it, but he just sort of whacked it into the net instead of just pushing it over the bar. So
you're going to go for Darlow in goal. John, what about you?
Goal. Yes.
John, what about you? Goalkeeper?
I think he'll definitely start with Darlow. I don't think, in my mind, there's a question about that. He will go with Darlow, I think.
Okay, back 4, John. Are we going for 3 centre halves and wing backs? What are we going for, do you think? And if
no,
give us your back 4 or back 5.
Yeah. I've got a feeling that he'll go for a flat back 4, particularly when he hasn't got Holding as well. He hasn't brought in a centre half. So you would then go with Lascelles and Fernandez as your 2 centre halves and Jamal Lewis on the left. It's saying, who do you go on the right? And we are short on the right. Plenty bodies, but I'm not a Yedlin fan. He's a poor defender. the Swedish guy I have still to be convinced of, and I think I would go with Manquillo right now.
Yeah, I would go with Manquillo for sure. The Swedish guy, dear me.
Kraft.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he totally lacks that.
What was that you said?
He's Kraft, not crap. So John,
Yeah, that's
John,
what I was asking you, Stephen. Yes.
Yeah.
John's gone for a back four, Malcolm. Is that the same as you?
I would go with a back four. I'd be quite happy on that. I'm wary of playing three centre halves, because then you're pushing your fullbacks sort of into a different kind of position, or if they don't get forward, then you're stuck with half your team in your penalty area or on the edge of it, and it's important that you get numbers forward. And so often Newcastle weren't doing that. They would have a back line that was stuck in the penalty area, and they just weren't getting out and pushing the game up the field. And so it was all being played in the Newcastle half, you know. And when that happens, it's not you that's in possession; it's the opposition. And as we saw, I think Newcastle had the least possession of any side last season in the Premiership.
Okay, what about your midfield,
I
Malcolm?
also think.
Go on, John.
May I say on the centre halves before we go? I don't know what option he's got but to go with a flat back four when you think that Kieran Clark is unfit, Shaw's unfit, Lejeune is off to Spain on loan for the season, and done it. So I with three centre halves.
Okay, midfield, Malcolm. How do you see the midfield lining up? We've got an abundance of players in midfield, but as a lot of people have mentioned, including Ben, we've got very little creativity.
Yes, yes, I understand that, but we do have width, and so I'm sure that Richie is going to be used in some way or another, and I just wonder whether Richie and Shelby could maybe do a job in the very centre, and look to be supplying. You know, we've seen Matt Ritchie. He's played in a whole number of positions. We haven't yet seen him in the centre of midfield, but I just have a feeling that he really could do a job in there. And he gets his head up all the time. He's looking all the while, looking forward. But I don't know. It's always this is I think the hardest team for us to try and pick, when there are so many new faces that have come in and it's the start of a season. Difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Midfield prediction then, Malcolm. John, how do you see it working out?
Well, I've got a feeling that when we're talking about midfield, you've got the two centre midfield positions, and then the two wide guys, the wingers, if you like. I've been one of those central midfield. I think he will start the signing. Start Hendricks, and it'll be a matter of whether you go with Hayden or Shelby if he's fit enough. He's missed the last two pre-season, but Steve Bush said today that he is fit. So it's who you would put alongside Hendricks, and it may well be Hayden. If you go then out wide, San Maximum would obviously be one of them. Is the other one going to be Richie? Is the other one going to be Joe Linton playing wide on the left? If he's going to get in the team, he's not going to be centre forward. That's the only position he can play. Heaven forbid, and I can see Malcolm's situation. We're not talking about who I would play, but who might actually play on Saturday. But I would probably go for Richie and send him wide and Hendricks alongside either Hayden or Shelby. And then with the two up front, either one tucked behind the centre forward or double striker.
Yeah. You mentioned Hayden, and I keep hearing from supporters how well they think he's doing, and I honestly don't see it. I really do not see it from Hayden at all, and I don't feel. I think he would do okay in the Championship, but he doesn't offer enough from the centre of midfield in the Premiership, and I don't think he's got the ability to offer enough. And that's why I mentioned playing Richie in there. If the wings positions are occupied, play Richie in there because he's looking, he sees things. He'll be playing balls in for forwards, hitting their runs and what have you. But Hayden, I'm sorry, I really can't see him doing it enough in the Premiership. He didn't do it last season for me, and he won't do it this season.
I was always concerned about Hayden, I've got to be honest, when he didn't want to stay under Rafa. Family reasons were mooted, but then suddenly he wanted to stay when Steve Bruce came in. So I've always been questioning his commitment to the cause, but he's been okay in flashes. He's not somebody who impresses me massively. Would he start for me at the weekend? I'd say no. I think we've got a lot more choice. Hendricks is proven. He's at a good age. I'd take a gamble on Hendricks. As everybody knows, I'm not a big Shelby fan either, but under the circumstances, he is creative. He's probably our only creative player who's in there at the moment.
Sure.
I would probably give him a shout. I'd look to protect a very weak back four, though. The back four hasn't really got a leader. I'm more concerned about the back four and the goalkeeper, and we've leaked a few goals in pre-season. So, yeah, it's a hell of a decision. I'm glad I'm not getting paid to make it. We're only having to say it. The big question, lads, and I know we're running over slightly, but I want to ask you about the formation. You're both suggesting we might go 4-4-2. Who we're going to play up front? You would suggest that Callum Wilson will get a start, make his debut in the number 13. Who's you going to play alongside him? Who would you like to see him play alongside Malcolm?
Well, I just wonder whether you could play maybe Richie on the left and put some Maximin running around Callum up front. Because the number of times I've witnessed St. Maximin coming inside and he's looking to get his shots away, and I think, well, maybe he could do the same, create the same danger in the middle, playing off of a centre forward. So if Steve Bruce were to go that way, I wouldn't have any complaints at all.
Andy Carroll's been the form man, Malcolm. Would you play Andy Carroll and Callum Wilson or not?
I'm not so sure about that. I'm really not convinced about Andy Carroll's fitness, I'm afraid. And the Premier League these days, you have to be absolutely spot on. You really do. Fitness is a key to playing in this division, and I'm just not sure that Andy Carroll's got it. He's got everything else going for him, but it's the fitness angle that worries me.
Okay, Joe McClellan reckons 4-2-3-1. Wilson up top with Almiron behind him, with the Saint and Richie either side of Almiron. John, what's your take then? What are you going to do up front?
Well, I mean, obviously Wilson's a given without any shadow of doubt. I think I would probably, if I'm using San Maximum out wide, I would probably use Almiron just behind Wilson. I don't think Ryan Fraser will start out wide because he hasn't played for 6 months. I think he's off the bench, if at all, because it would be unfair on the boy. Would you play Carroll alongside Wilson? A lot of people would say yes, because it's the game against West Ham, his old club, and it might just go for him and he might just score. I've got a feeling that they would take this if Carroll and Wilson played together, because they're both orthodox number 9s. And like Malcolm said, I've got a big question mark against Andy's fitness. I think Andy's more likely to be used off the bench and Fraser used off the bench, and I would go Almiron behind Wilson.
Okay, good stuff. I'm going to ask you for your predictions, Malcolm. I'm sure you might be up for it. I'm going to get you back on, as I always do, pre-match. If you're up for that on Saturday and after match, just for 10 minutes, have a chat about the game. But give us your prediction, Malcolm. It might change once we see the team on Saturday, of course. But give us your prediction now. How do you see Newcastle United faring at West Ham?
I don't think they will lose. Now, whether they can score enough goals to get the win, I don't know, because I think that there's every likelihood that Newcastle will concede. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
Okay, 2-2. And John, your prediction?
Well, last season, if you remember, we won 3 at West Ham, near the season at West Ham. With the 2 defences that these 2 clubs have got, the defenders, I could well see 5 goals again happening. But I'm going to go for Newcastle to win 2-1.
2-1. Good stuff. James agrees with you. Last couple of points. Little Musgrave says Carroll isn't a Premier League starter. He's a good option from the bench if you want to change it or are needing a late goal. Chris Collins says the new boys apparently had to sing happy birthday to Mike Ashley today as part of the terms. I find that hard to believe, Chris, but you never know. I'm sure they've been fond of a pizza with Mike in the past, like with Lascelles leading the team to the posher ends of Newcastle to go and have a pizza with Mike. So you never know. There might have been a birthday cake. To be honest, if there'd been a birthday cake with Mike Ashley there, I think I would have been doing what Gaza did to somebody, or what somebody did to Gaza in the World Cup in 1990, and that's pushing it into his face. David Anderson says 2-0 to the Toon. Daniel Kane says all players said about the ambition of the club. Did you notice a takeover on Longstaff's liability? Lots of people saying that. And Byron just saying what everybody else is saying. Brilliant show again, gents. Always a pleasure hearing all of your opinions. Thank you very much, Byron. That's it, lads. Great to be back on again with you. And hopefully catch up again same time next Wednesday. But for now, Malcolm and John, thanks very much.
All right, and enjoy the game on Saturday, everyone.
Cheers,
Thanks
John.
a lot, boys. 8 o'clock. Be there. Cheers now.